Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and today for day 10 of Listmas 2022, I'm going to be joined by my buddy Cliff, aka Analog Thrills, as we count down our top 10 best looking coasters.
Hey, hello, hi, 'tis I, Cliff, aka Analog Thrills, and thanks, Drew, once again for having me back for another year of Listmas. I've been photographing roller coasters for about 5 years now, and when I do go out photographing roller coasters, because roller coasters don't exist in a vacuum, there's a lot of other elements outside of a roller coaster, be it its theming or its surrounding environment, that certainly enhances the visual presentation of a roller coaster and can certainly inform how you may want to craft an image. But for my list, I am going to treat these roller coasters that I'm ranking as if they do exist in a vacuum. If you were to completely rip them from their surroundings and put them on a flat, empty space. My number 5 pick is one that is probably going to be very controversial, and you may think that I've lost all credibility just by even saying this, because I know a lot of enthusiasts don't particularly think this is a very pretty looking roller coaster. I, on the other hand, kind of disagree, and my pick is Steel Curtain at Kennywood in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, or as I like to jokingly call it, Football the Ride. And first off, the color scheme is certainly not my favorite color scheme by any means. If you didn't know it was themed to the Pittsburgh Steelers, you'd probably think it looks a little bit more like a bumblebee. I would even go as far to say that it kind of looks like those funky Fisher-Price toys for toddler that's just a bunch of rails tangled up within themselves and you pass a little beads through them. Does anybody even remember that? But what really does it for me with Steel Curtain is that it looks like nothing else out there. It's almost like this giant piece of abstract, kind of Picasso-esque line art, wherein the first 5 elements of the coaster sort of tangle and weave around this, within this almost amorphous tower built out of frames within frames within frames within frames. And it's like the longer I sit and stare at it, the more I have to kind of appreciate how something that was built with pure pragmatism in mind can kind of just look so funky. And then I have to also appreciate the portions of the ride that sort of weave out of the larger structure, particularly the 0G stall that's beneath a large airtime hill. It almost resembles the kind of design that we see on Full Throttle at Magic Mountain with the top hat built into the vertical loop, where on Steel Curtain it kind of looks like the arches of a bridge. And while I can agree that it's not nearly as pleasing to the eyes as something as sleek as a B&M coaster, I sort of think of it this way. If B&Ms are the big budget blockbuster movie that has a lot of money poured into its quality and visual effects and just looks pretty shot by shot by shot, Steel Curtain is kind of like the indie art house flick that is not necessarily as accessible to a mass audience and may require some effort from the viewer in order to appreciate.
Moving on from Picasso to Hokusai, let's talk about Wavebreaker, the Rescue Coaster at number 9. Now, I can't lie, a lot of this might be because of the setting over the water, but I will say this ride looks super cool. This Intamin tire launch coaster that's going to be very similar to Arctic Rescue opening next year at SeaWorld San Diego is host to multiple launches as well as quite a lot of twists and turns. It's so amazing to watch this ride rip around its track as well as pull some really cool lateral maneuvers. But all in all, I think this ride just looks really cool. Cliff, your turn.
My number 4 pick is at my home park, and it's X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California. And with this one, I'm going to start with the color scheme. And I certainly agree that the old color scheme looked a bit garish. I don't know, I kind of liked it a little bit when it first opened up, when it was fresh, but then over the years it faded and wasn't exactly very pleasing to look at. But with its newer color scheme and conversion to X2, with its wine red track and black supports that I think really drives home just how menacing this coaster really is. And it also features one of my favorite looking track designs. It may as well be the spine of a T-800 robot from Terminator, with its 4 rails and thicker, bulkier ties and double spine. It's really sleek A-frame supports peppered in with these really big, beefy lattice supports. And also to mention, a lot of its elements sort of running parallel to each other. And looking at it from a profile view, it kind of actually looks like they can fit within each other. And I should also mention that it's been repainted almost 15 years ago, and the paint job still looks good as new. With some minor blemishes, of course, when you get real close to the coaster. And now with its redesigned wing-style trains that features all these complex parts that sort of hold it together as it rushes around the track. This is a coaster that, without any other additional theming, just by the looks of it, embodies exactly what the ride is. Completely maniacal in all the best and worst ways. And as much as I actually love the fact that it's the first thing you see as you drive up to Six Flags Magic Mountains Hill, I actually sometimes kind of wish this was placed elsewhere where I can comfortably stare at this coaster and not have to take my attention away from it just to prevent myself from rear-ending some other cars ahead of me.
If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know I love a good RMC Raptor, aka their single rail model. I've been on all of them with the exception of one, but I gotta say the best looking of all of them, at least in my opinion, is Stunt Pilot at Silverwood in northern Idaho. This ride is very similar to the original prototypes, but the track has been elongated just a bit more. Why is that, you ask? Well, the train has been extended to a full 10 cars instead of 8, and in my opinion only makes this ride look better, as the longer trains really give into this layout, making it look like a snake riding down a water slide. It's really breathtaking in person. And I gotta say, the color scheme of white track with red supports is very rare, and it just pops from every single angle.
My number 3 pick is Goliath at Six Flags Great America. And if I remember correctly, Goliath was the first RMC creation to feature the truss-style support system for its lift hill and first drop, along with its zero-G stall that cuts right underneath the lift hill as if it were on a bridge. And seeing this in person, I have to say, is just so mesmerizing. I absolutely love how the minimalist design contrasts with the rest of the layout's more traditional wooden roller coaster support design. For a wooden coaster, it looks like it shouldn't even exist, or that there's even too little to support it. And if you look at this coaster from just about any angle, I have to always appreciate just how uniform it looks. With its large 180-degree turns framing other turns, its airtime hills running alongside each other, and of course the dive loop that sort of tears its head out of the truss structure. And I really love how its orange track contrasts with the wood. And I even love how the minimalist truss structure is framed on either end by traditional wooden supports. Overall, I get the sense that Goliath is a visual statement for what RMC's mission really is, which is combining the old with the new.
Heading to Orlando, Florida for number 5, to SeaWorld Orlando for their famous hypercoaster, Mako. This ride is just very pleasing to the eye, especially with its beautiful purple and blue color scheme. And of course, the multitude of parabolic hills just going up and down and up and down. This ride is super fascinating to look at from off-ride, and on-ride you can say it's even a better view. I will say one thing though, this ride is in desperate need of a repaint, but the fact that it's on this list without it, I think says enough.
Now my number 2 pick might be a bit controversial because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to rank these coasters just on how they look as if they had no other additional elements to enhance it. But when it comes to HangTime at Knott's Berry Farm, I do really believe that its lighting package is synonymous with the coaster itself. You simply cannot think about HangTime without thinking about how this coaster looks at night. And oh my god, HangTime looks absolutely beautiful at night. And even in the daytime, I do appreciate how HangTime looks with its inversions almost seemingly floating in midair, and its tangle web of track at the northernmost plot of the coaster. Its teal track and sand supports are also pretty easy on the eyes, albeit not as vibrant or as interesting as something as like Fury 325, for instance. But once the sun sets and the lights come on, be prepared to want to sit and just stare at this coaster for hours even. There's just nothing more amusing than watching the tracer lights chase after the train as it barrels down the track, and Knott's Berry Farm even includes some special light shows with the attraction during some seasonal events. And I could potentially go on about some of the other clever details that are included with HangTime, but that would overall start to get me into discussing some of the theming of the coaster, which I promised I would avoid doing.
For number 3, we're going to be heading close to my home at Six Flags Magic Mountain for Twisted Colossus, the RMC dueling coaster. This ride is pretty much 2 in 1, as there's 2 separate tracks that you have to navigate. All the while, you'll be dueling the other train while diving in and out of this complex structure. I love looking at this ride from off-ride and on, as everything from those 80-degree drops to the different transitions over and under each other are just absolutely phenomenal. Add in that great color scheme of a bright blue and green with that white support structure, and boom, you have one very bright and very fascinating ride.
And my number 1 pick is a coaster that I actually have not ridden yet, let alone been to the park, and that's Intimidator 305 in Doswell, Virginia. And much like my previous pick in Goliath, I absolutely love the look of the ultra minimalist truss lift and drop. That's also coupled by just how absolutely massive this roller coaster is, let alone just how much of a statement it is to have something so large and so intimidating in your skyline be a bright and vibrant red and yellow. I can imagine you probably see this thing from miles and miles away and even be stunned by the silhouette of it. And one of my other favorite looks, and quite frankly, probably one of my favorite elements that Intamin designs, are their quick and snappy S-turns, which when you look at videos of Intimidator 305 at certain angles, and just how effortlessly those trains traverse those snaps. My favorite photos of Intimidator 305 are ones in which you can see one part of the train exiting the S-bend while the other part of the train is still traveling through it, with the train contorting itself through those tight maneuvers. It's almost like watching those videos where people pop bubble wrap because it's satisfying. Simply put, Intimidator 305 not only has my favorite lift hill and support design, but it's also just my favorite coaster to watch in general. It looks like a marvel and masterpiece of engineering.
Coming in at number 1 is one of my favorite rides of 2022. Heck, I might as well award it with my favorite ride of the year. We're heading to Kings Island in Mason, Ohio for Orion. This B&M Giga Coaster features an 85-degree, 300-foot tall drop and features one of the coolest and ebb and flow layouts imaginable. And I gotta say, at least in person, this ride just looks otherworldly, as it has a minimal support structure, and of course lots of ups and downs and dives, and even a great looking helix to finish it off, with a really pleasant blue and gray color scheme, at least in my opinion, and outshines one of the other best looking rides in the world, Banshee, just next door. But all in all, just like all these picks for me, it looks great. And with that, I wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in for Listmas Day 10. I really do appreciate you coming in. Cliff, you have any thoughts?
And thanks everybody for watching all the way through. I hope you liked my picks. And if roller coaster photography is something you are interested in or enjoy, be sure to check out my Instagram page at analog_thrills, where I take many photos of roller coasters with more of a fine art approach. Happy holidays, everyone, and hope to see you again next year for Listmas.
Well, I can definitely say, for one, you should check out Cliff's amazing Instagram page, and two, I don't know if I agree with all of your picks, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? Again, I want to say thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, though. We've got one more official guest day of Listmas, followed by my top 25 coasters overall list coming out on December 25th. You won't want to miss it. So with that all said, until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.